This program is brought to you in association with First National Bank of Botswana. Welcome to First Issues. Purchasing or acquiring property is one of the most important investments that one could ever make, but the costs associated can deter people from actually making that decision. Aside from the obvious purchase costs like the interest on a loan, there may be lawyers' fees and of course the transfer duty fees. Put simply, transfer duty is a tax that is levied on the value of any property acquired by any person by way of a transaction, inheritance, or any other way. For example, one may be transferring property to their names following a divorce settlement. Another may have inherited a property from that parent or child who has passed on, or they may just simply be buying that dream home. In other words, whoever is going to be the owner of a property after buying it, inheriting it, or acquiring it any other way is required to pay transfer duty. While the Transfer Duty Act has always been in existence in Botswana, it was amended and then put into effect in May of 2023. Tonight on First Issues, we discuss some key points from this amendment with Director Tax at Grant Thornton, Olivia Muzvidziwa.
Transfer Duty Act, the Amendment Act, came into effect on 3 May 2023, and it was in response to outcry by the real estate industry, by the tax-paying public, and also I think government listened to what the tax-paying public was saying and responded by introducing these amendments through this Amendment Act. The key amendments include, I think the main one that I will cite is the transfer duty rate, where a transfer of property is being made to a non-citizen. Prior to this Amendment Act, the tax rate, the duty rate was 30%, which was very punitive. And at the time it was introduced, there was a public outcry, and it obviously negatively impacted the industry, the real estate industry, in the sense that it became very expensive for non-citizens to acquire property in Botswana. And looking at government policy of encouraging foreign direct investment, this also impacted those investors who wanted to invest in property because they had to pay 30% more. This was an increase from 5% to 30%, so it was a very significant increase. So now with the Transfer Duty Amendment Act, that rate was reduced to 10% for non-citizens, where the value of the property or the purchase price, whichever is the greater, is up to 2 million. Anything in excess of 2 million, the rate was reduced to 15%. So this was a welcome development, and the hope is that it will stimulate the industry again. Amendment Act introduced a waiver of transfer duty where VAT is payable. Okay, VAT is payable where the sale of the property is being made by a person who is registered for VAT, like property developers. If you look around Gaborone, there are a lot of developments, apartments, and maybe BHC as well. It builds properties. So when they sell those properties, they charge VAT because they are registered for VAT. So what the Amendment Act says is that where VAT is applicable, there is no duty on such properties. So this is also a welcome development, and those people who are acquiring property now have to assess whether it's more beneficial to buy from a person who is registered for VAT or from a non-registrant, because Sometimes you find for citizens, the transfer duty rate is 5% and the VAT rate is 14%. So let's say a property is going for 1 million. Let's forget about the exemption for citizens. Let's say it's all subject to transfer duty. If they buy from someone who is registered for VAT, they will pay tax at 14%, which is 140,000. So they end up paying 1,140,000. If they buy from someone who is not registered for VAT, that person cannot charge VAT, so they'll just pay the 1 million. And if you're a citizen, the first 1 million is exempt from tax, so you don't pay any duty on that. So it's a critical analysis that they have to do when buying property. It's cheaper to buy from someone who is not registered for VAT for a citizen, even for non-citizens in some cases. So it's something that they do need to do an assessment to manage their costs. And then we also have exemption from transfer duty of new allocations of tribal land and state land. Right, so when people acquire the tribal land, they've been exempted from transfer duty on all new allocations, right? And then we have the requirement for the Commissioner, Botswana Unified Revenue Service, to use local authority valuations when valuing property, because transfer duty is administered by the Commissioner General BRS. So they have to, the property has to be valued. Remember, transfer duty is on the purchase price or the market value of the property, whichever is the greater. So the commissioner has been authorized to use local council valuations or to seek a valuation from an independent person to arrive at that valuation of the property, which they then compare to the purchase price to see which value is suitable, right? And then we have immovable property acquired or being transferred to a parent where a child is passed on and left property, and that child didn't have his own family or a child. So in that has been added to the exemptions. The parent does not have to pay any transfer duty on such a transfer. There was also a requirement for certain classes of people, specified people like divorcees. In a divorce situation, maybe the property was in the name of one of the spouses. So when they divorce, they share property, or property is allocated, you take this and you take that. The transfer is also exempt from transfer duty, and they've been exempted from filing a declaration with the Botswana Unified Revenue Service in order to enjoy that exemption, which was a requirement before, that they need to go and make a declaration, and then the commissioner confirms that they are really exempt and whatever. So all those administrative processes, they've been removed. They get to enjoy their benefit without having to spend more time or more costs in making the declaration. It also applies to surviving, to those the surviving spouses and children who inherit property on the death of the parent. They are also exempt from those administrative processes. So those are the main changes that were brought about by the Transfer Duty Act.
You know, when you go on social media where we find most of discussions around these, you find that people want to know, you know, you spoke about a first-time allocated land, right? Mm. But is there any exception or exemption for somebody who's a first-time property buyer?
Yes, there is an exemption for citizens who are first-time property buyers for residential accommodation. Yes, those are exempt from transfer duty. So they don't pay duty. And also where a citizen has, this is an important one which I had left out, where a citizen acquires property irrespective of whether it's first time or whatever, they get an exemption of the first 1,500,000 from transfer duty. That was 1 million before, so they've increased it to 1,500,000. 500,000.
Also in the new Act, all documentation pertaining to any transfers is to be kept for a period no shorter than 10 years. What is the assumption with that? Whether keeping it for that long, and what would warrant not keeping it after 10 years?
Okay, the keeping of documentation is a requirement in most tax laws, and I'm sure other laws as well, mainly because it's a record, right? And if the commissioner or the commissioner of taxes, the commissioner general, BRS, decides maybe after 2 years or 3 years to say, I think there was something amiss with this transaction, he would want to see that documentation. And as a taxpayer, it's, I think, for my benefit to maintain those records. In case there is a query that is raised in future, I can substantiate, I can show that indeed I entered into this contract and these were the agreements that we signed and all that, to justify whatever tax that I paid.